colleagues, guests, fellow researchers, students. I think we have students, many students here as well, and especially advocates for biodiversity. I'm really delighted to officially welcome you to the 2022 Dresden Nexus Conference. From wherever you are in the world, this year's conference is held over 3 days and will bring together students, communities, researchers, also practitioners from all over the world, and will feature unique and I hope also innovative insights from authorities in sustainable development for the purpose of promoting an important intersection of science and policy making. This is special about DNC, that we have academics and we have practitioners, policymakers, practitioners from industry. Our topic this year is biodiversity, stewardship for vital resources. And the term stewardship means that we supervise, we management something. And in this case, it's our precious and threatened nature. So welcome to DNC 2022. I would like to start with a little bit of academic reflection on the resource nexus. If you look at the origin of resource, it comes from the Latin word resurgere, and it means to rise again, to recover. How important is this? And if we think of resources in general, we might think of financial resources, of manufactured capital, of human resources, ideas, relationships, and also nature. And this is the focus of our Dresden Nexus conference, that we focus on environmental resources, being well aware that there are more resources relevant for our society and our economy. And another Latin word, nexus. The nexus comes also from Latin, from nectere, and means the act of binding together. So we bring different environmental resources together. And when we say we bring them together, we do not only reflect upon them separately, but we look at their mutual dependencies. We avoid and really want to leave this thinking in silos. So not only looking at water, not only looking at biodiversity, at soil, at energy, at food, health, but really the mutual dependencies, trade-offs, and also synergies. This is the idea of the Resource Nexus Conference, the Dresden Nexus Conference. We look at different environmental resources and at their interdependencies and at their interrelatedness. And therefore, we came up with an understanding that you also find on the website of the Dresden Nexus Conference, and it's also based on a discussion we had at United Nations University, the institute that really focuses specifically on the nexus, where we say it's a nexus approach to environmental resources management. I mentioned this already. And then we look, when we do research or also do capacity building, we look at interrelations and interdependencies and also transitions and fluxes across different scales, different compartments. And that also means that we look at the complexity of systems. It's not only complicated, but it's really complex. I already mentioned the theme for this year's conference, biodiversity, stewardship for vital resources, where we look at biodiversity in the center, so to say, and we look at nature's contributions to people, to ecosystems, and there you see other resources displayed just on this exemplary graph. We have water, climate, energy, soil, but then also systems we need for our provisioning, food, health, social systems, but also the economy. And when we look at the contributions to people, we also think of the different species, we think of the ecosystems of different genes, and really this idea that we if we really focus on stewardship for biodiversity, then we also can have this value and can use the value of biodiversity. Why is this important? The rate of global change in nature during the past 50 years is unprecedented in human history. If you look at the development, and my dear colleagues will talk about this topic later on. We have direct drivers that have a huge impact on biodiversity, like changes in land use, for example. I mentioned soil, but also sea use, so water, the oceans. We directly exploit organisms for different purposes, for example, also health. Climate change has an impact, pollution, and also as globalization has evolved over the last decades, invasion of alien species. And that also means that meanwhile, that is an estimation, 25% of species are threatened. And therefore, there were biodiversity targets developed, known under the Aichi, after a Japanese city, UNIG biodiversity targets. That means that we do not only have to halt the threatening, but also to reverse it. And this is where we have to bring together the different disciplines, different perspectives, where it's then again about the nexus. So this does mean we have biodiversity experts at the conference, but also many experts from different other disciplines, because this is what we have to do, that we really then collaborate for those targets. I would like to end with 2 examples. One is on mining. One of the discussions we currently have is about now energy change due to the war we face in Ukraine. So therefore, I decided to bring one example from mining. This is an example from a colleague who worked in Mongolia. And this is just one example how different resources come together and have an impact on biodiversity. Mining has an impact on soil erosion, has an impact on soil pollution, and has an impact on water pollution. And then there are direct and indirect impacts on aquatic biodiversity with the sediment loads from erosion, for example. And via the pollution, we have bioaccumulation, and then this again via the water path goes into aquatic biodiversity. I have a second example that is for construction, and I choose this specifically because we also, close to Dresden in Lusatia, we have mining, coal mines. And now there was the discussion that this area should be transformed. Transition in mining is the huge topic here. And there are different proposals for large-scale research centers. And one is on construction, Lausitz's Art of Building. Therefore, I choose this one. And I also here only pick the example of biodiversity. There are others, of course, as well. There's a huge topic for construction worldwide. That is sand mining. We have the sealing of soil. So wherever we construct, we seal the soil. That has an impact on biodiversity. And then there's meanwhile a positive development, because I did not only want to bring negative examples, but there can also be positive mutual dependencies. And one topic that all 3 organizers, the TU Dresden, the IOER, and University-FLORES work together, that is urban farming, and that can then have a positive impact on soil sealing if you have indoor or outdoor farming, so vertical farming, or if you have farming on the roof, from the roofs of the buildings. The negative comes from sand mining. We have destroyed riverbeds and beaches, for example, but the positive can then be less soil sealing if we have urban farming, and hopefully also less monoculture. So when we discuss the nexus of resources, that means that we look at different perspectives, and it can be discussed whether there should be 2 or 3 or even more environmental resources taken into consideration. In any case, it's more than 1. It's very complex. You see this already with this these 2 little examples. I did not refer to climate change here or circular economy. There are many more topics that could be discussed with the 2 examples of mining and construction, just those 2, and only biodiversity, where we already see how complex this is. And that is why DNC is urgently needed, that experts from different areas, science, policy, and practice come together and discuss options. And therefore, I'm really very happy that we have this Dresden Nexus conference here, that you join us during those 3 days with your different perspectives and contribute to promoting a Nexus approach for this year's conference to mitigate and also resolve biodiversity loss from different perspectives. So thank you again for joining me today. I hope I could just give you some thoughts. What is the Resource Nexus, and 2 examples how we analyze Resource Nexus questions. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you will be enjoying this year's Dresden Nexus conference. Sorry, to be inspiring, also educational. Also go to other sessions for topics you have not yet worked on. I always learn a lot. Get also inspired by methods others use. Even if the topic is not your topic, you can learn from the methods the colleagues are using. And I hope that we can also develop networks. I said in the beginning that networks are also important resources for tackling environmental resources management, so that you use these 3 days to develop your knowledge, to develop your networks, and in the end that we all make a contribution to biodiversity, to our nature. Thank you so much. And now I would like to hand over to our minister, who shares my last name, but we are not related, who for environment, he supports this conference intensively. And yeah, I think it's not so usual and really a rather new topic that if you are a Minister for Environment, that biodiversity is so high on your agenda. So we are really grateful that this is the case for our Minister Wolfram Guenther. Thank you very much and enjoy the conference.
Thank you, Adel. I take over with the video of the minister. Just give me 1 second. And I will give the word to Minister Guenther.
Sehr geehrte Frau Professor Guenther, sehr geehrter Herr Professor Wende, sehr geehrte Frau Stein, sehr geehrter Herr Dr. Lindner, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren. Herzlich willkommen zur Dresden Nexus Konferenz 2022 und vielen Dank für die Möglichkeit dieses zumindest digitalen Grußwortes. Das Artensterben hat besorgniserregende Dimensionen erreicht. Weltweit sind mehr als 1 Million Arten vom Aussterben bedroht. Und so steht es im 2019er Bericht des Weltbiodiversitätsrates IPBES. Dieses massive Artensterben aufzuhalten, ist genauso dringend wie das Aufhalten des Klimawandels. Und hierfür sind genauso ambitionierte, transformative Maßnahmen auf allen Ebenen notwendig, also auf Ebene der Vereinten Nationen, der EU, auf Bundes- und auf Länderebene. Der Zielrahmen der UN für die Zeit nach 2020 steht noch aus. Wichtig sind aber konkrete und messbare Ziele, verbindliche Maßnahmen mit Zeitplänen und Ziele zu deren Umsetzung, ein entschlossenes und rasches Handeln. Mit der EU-Biodiversitätsstrategie 2030 als Kernbestandteil des Green Deal liegt für Europa zumindest bereits ein ehrgeiziger Rahmen vor. Und der 2019 geschlossene sächsische Koalitionsvertrag gibt uns auch ein starkes Mandat für intensive Maßnahmen gegen das Artensterben und den Verlust von Lebensräumen hier im Freistaat Sachsen. Für die Weiterentwicklung des sächsischen Biodiversitätsprogramms haben wir 2021 eine breit angelegte öffentliche Beteiligungsumfrage durchgeführt. Auf dieser Grundlage werden wir in diesem Jahr die Post-2020-Ziele festlegen und ein neues Biodiversitätsprogramm starten mit einem Zeithorizont bis zum Jahr 2030 analog zur EU-Biodiversitätsstrategie. Das Handlungskonzept Insektenschutz ist Kernbestandteil dieses Programms, das den Titel Sachsens biologische Vielfalt 2030 einfach machen trägt und bei dem konkrete, abrechenbare Handlungsziele im Mittelpunkt stehen werden. Post 2020 hat längst begonnen und wir haben bereits eine ganze Reihe Sofortmaßnahmen gestartet, darunter eine neue Förderrichtlinie Insektenschutz. Hierfür können seit 2021 Anträge gestellt werden. Ein neues Landesförderprogramm Naturschutz. Hier ist die Antragstellung seit Jahresbeginn möglich. Das neue Alleenprogramm ist ebenfalls zu Beginn dieses Jahres gestartet. Und für das Projekt Natur vor der eigenen Haustür, mach mit, suchen wir aktuell regionale Projektpartner. Gerade gestartet ist auch der neue Durchgang der landesweiten Brutvogelkartierung. Endlich. Und dann unsere Leitfäden für Artenschutz bei der Gewinnung erneuerbarer Energien. Hier ist der Leitfaden Vogelschutz und Windenergie seit Anfang 2022 in Kraft und die neue Richtlinie für mehr Stadtgrün, Stadtnatur befindet sich aktuell im Kabinettsverfahren. Zu den Leuchtturmvorhaben im Biodiversitätsprogramm zählen die Umsetzung eines Biotopverbundes durch eine Flächenstrategie für mehr Naturschutz auf landeseigenen Flächen. Der Freistaat verfügt über 13% der Landesfläche im Eigentum. Mehr Prozessschutz durch Anteilserhöhung ungenutzter Flächen im Landeswald mit dem Ziel von 10% bis zum Ende dieses Jahres. Natürlich unser Auenprogramm mit 35 Potenzialgebieten, in denen Projekte zur Auenrevitalisierung umgesetzt werden sollen. Und eine Verbesserung des Zustandes im europäischen Netz Natura 2000 durch Schwerpunkt-Naturschutzstationen. Sowie das Leitbild Stadtnatur. Angesichts der Pandemie und ganz aktuell vor dem Hintergrund des Ukraine-Krieges treten die gegenwärtigen Umweltkrisen häufig etwas in den Hintergrund. Aber die Krisen dürfen nicht gegeneinander ausgespielt werden. Artensterben und Klimaerwärmung laufen ohne beherztes Handeln ungebremst weiter. Jedes Zögern erhöht die Folgekosten in der Zukunft. Nur wenn wir uns alle gemeinsam einbringen, uns ehrgeizige Ziele setzen und sie auch umsetzen, kann das globale Artensterben aufgehalten werden. Die Dresden-Nexus-Konferenz 2022 sendet mit ihrer Erklärung zur Biodiversität hier ein wichtiges Signal an die Staatengemeinschaft und den im Herbst stattfindenden zweiten Teil der UN-Biodiversity-Konferenz COP15. Meine Damen und Herren, die Mitwirkung des Freistaates Sachsen an der Dresden-Nexus-Konferenz hat bereits Tradition. Sie ermöglicht den Dialog mit Teilnehmerinnen und Teilnehmern aus der ganzen Welt und den intensiven Austausch zu den Themen Ressourcenschutz und Ressourcenmanagement. Im Jahr 2020 musste die Konferenz komplett digital stattfinden. Das reduzierte zum einen unseren aller ökologischen Fußabdruck und erlaubte andererseits eine bessere Einbindung von Teilnehmerinnen und Teilnehmern aus dem globalen Süden. Und ich freue mich, dass wir diesen Ansatz mit einem unserer EQ-Zukunftspreise angemessen würdigen konnten. Für die diesjährige Konferenz wünsche ich Ihnen und uns erhellende Erkenntnisse, einen angeregten Austausch und konstruktiven Dialog zur Lösung der drängenden Fragen unserer Zeit. Herzlichen Dank.
Yeah, we are really also grateful for the continuous support of the ministry. As the minister said, we got a prize for the last conference. We really moved it within, I think, 6 or 8 weeks from an in-person conference to a virtual format with a wonderful team. And we are happy that most of the team is still with us during this conference, and I know you all sit behind the screens making this possible. I would like to thank you all really for your support. Even if the conference only has started, a lot of work is behind us. I already touched upon the topic of biodiversity. I'm personally a business researcher, also analyzing biodiversity from a business perspective, but I'm very happy that one of the co-organizers André Lindner is really an expert of biodiversity, and he will now give an introduction on this year's topic of the conference, Biodiversity, Stewardship for Vital Resources. The floor is yours, André.
Yeah, Edel, thank you very much for the introduction, and also, although it was recorded, thank you to the Ministry again for the greeting words. Dear keynote speakers, dear conveners, colleagues, participants, co-organizers, as the director of the School of Civil Environmental Engineering, I also warmly welcome you on behalf of Technische Universität Dresden here at the Nexus conference. And in the next couple of minutes, I want to ask the question, which you see already on the screen: is it really our last chance to see? Our last chance to see a lot of species alive in the natural habitats, or also the last chance to see the possibility to counteract ongoing biodiversity loss, and hence compromising our very fundamentals of development and also our well-being. More or less at the same time in Davos, right now, the World Economic Forum started their dialogue again. And in February, as every year, the very same World Economic Forum, they always publish their top 10 risk list for our global economy. And it's not there yet. Maybe you can think for yourself for a couple of seconds, what factors are in this top 10 list for the most severe risk for our global economy? And it looks like this. So you see the top 3 are all environmental factors: climate action failure, extreme weather, and also biodiversity loss. And of course, those factors are interconnected again. So if we speak about losing species and interacting more and more with our natural environments, if you look at the still ongoing pandemic and the viruses who came before that, if it's Ebola, Zika, SARS, even HIV, they are all jumped the species barrier from animals to humans. And this is also like an indicator that there is something wrong. And if we do not act fast, after the pandemic will be before the next pandemic. As well, biodiversity loss is directly interrelated to also the environmental damage we do, to the natural resource crisis, and also to livelihood crisis, because a lot of communities are directly dependent of the goods and services nature provides. As already mentioned, there are these big killers. Edel already talked about this, that there's overexploitation, especially also agricultural activity, which causes biodiversity loss. And we will also come back to this important topic during the sessions and also during the Prisma Award in the closing already. I will give you one example of biodiversity loss. We cannot speak about everything, neither in the opening, but I want to introduce you to this guy. This is the kakapo. It's a parrot in New Zealand. And I want to quote here from a book. The kakapo is a bird out of time. If you look one in its large, round, greeny brown face, it has a look of serenely innocent incomprehension that makes you want to hug it and tell it that everything will be all right, though you know that it probably will not be. This is from a book from Douglas Adams, already from 1990, Last Chance to See, where I borrowed the title. And in 1990, where the first issue was published of this book, was even before the Convention of Biological Diversity came into place during the Rio Summit in 1992. And then you see like the Conference of the Parties of the CBD going on, although there was an increasing effort and a global understanding that we have to act, you see the biodiversity still decreases. And although some of the IG targets already mentioned were achieved, there are quite some protected areas, but without measuring their effectiveness. There has been a development of national strategies, but in most cases without considering their effective implementation. Yet, so there we have a connection point where we have to continue to work also in this post-2020 agenda. As already mentioned in the upcoming second part of the COP15, we are in the decade of ecosystem restoration, and also UNEP celebrates 50 years. This year it's an anniversary, and that we can really make this year 2022 a turning point, hopefully going somewhere, if not the green line, close to the green line, and that we not end up continuing on the path towards the 6th mass extinction on our planet Earth. we are out of our boundaries, our safe operating space, whether it's biosphere integrity, the coral reef, the Great Barrier Reef near to Australia bleached for 91% this year. Novel entities, especially plastic pollution, is one of the main drivers of environmental degradation and hence also biodiversity loss. And also the way we do agriculture and compromising our biochemical flows have an influence. They are all interrelated. And in comparison, climate change might be the easy problem to solve. And also, this was fairly recently now also quantified that the green water, that is the water available to plants, that we are beyond our safe operating space and we are in a very, very risky area. And we have to work together with the guidelines of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm personally a fan of the so-called wedding cake arrangement, saying that the biosphere is the requirement for a healthy society within a just and fair economy can exist. How much is nature worth? Well, there's a lot of scientific discussion. I will not go into this here, but give you some examples. Probably you're all aware of flood protection, carbon capture and storage, but also pollination. And if you would look into a supermarket when most pollination services would not be there, our supermarket stocks would look quite different. So what already mentioned is there is complexity behind this. There are complex systems in place and we have to push to also successfully communicate this complexity. Just one brief example, staying with the pollination example. In 2017, there was this study done in the United Kingdom, and one of the main outcomes was that less than half of the companies sampled here knew which of the raw materials they source depend on pollinators. So they're using something, not really understanding where it's coming from. And maybe you all know this one, Brazil nut. And just to highlight the beauty, but also the complexity is that here some male bees need to collect the scent of epiphytic orchids in the rainforest. Only then they can attract females, which then pollinate the flowers of this tree. And only if this rodent, this agouti, disperse the seeds, we have the fruits and the seeds. And hence we have a product and value chains and the baseline for livelihoods. And we have to understand this complexity to help to maintain it. And all these three organizing institutions working towards this to also educate young researchers, hopefully leading the way in the future. And you will have the opportunity in one of the dedicated breaks to learn more about the graduate schools and joint doctoral programs of the partners which come together in this conference, but on many other occasions. And I will close with that we have to really bring together this puzzle. Not one can do everything, we have to work together. And in all three institutions as well, there are certain guidelines. Of course, sustainability in research and teaching, but also from an institutional perspective, and also transfer and internationalization. And I'm very happy that Professor Tetzlaff is here, and I know that he will have to leave soon. He is with us from Wrocław in Poland. So I will switch and I will give you the word first, Professor Tetzlaff, that you get not into some trouble for your other appointment. So I give you the stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for changing the schedule. So I'm more than pleased to, let's say a few words to all of you. So let me start. Dear participants of the Dresden Nexus conference in 2022, which is entitled Biodiversity Stewardship for Vital Resources. Dear keynote speakers, dear directors, conveners, presenters, organizing, dear guests. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you at this conference on behalf of the University Executive Board of TU Dresden in my position as a Chief Officer, Technology Transfer and Internationalization. TU Dresden is a global university where international students, scholars, and scientists study, teach, and conduct research in close cooperation with outstanding international universities and further partnerships in business and society. They share their scientific excellence and expertise in international networks, making significant contributions to support the progress in solving global challenges. One important example at this university is the Center for Sustainability Assessment and Policy, PRISMA, which stands for Performance and Policy Research in Sustainability Measurement and Assessment. Here, not only biodiversity is an essential part of the activities, in the interdisciplinary concept and method development, teaching and advice for policy business and society, but PRISMA will again award scientists for their excellent research in sustainability, assessment and policy on the final day of this conference. This time, with emphasis on biodiversity-related topics, and I'm looking forward to get to know the winners. As being a regionally anchored university, TU Dresden especially tries to expand its vibrant international partnerships for a global campus also in order to effectively foster a permanent status as a German university of excellence. With that, TU Dresden has a strong focus on interdisciplinarity, aiming to develop novel technologies and concepts and make them available to science, industry, and society. One of the many examples of this university is the Global Water and Climate Adaptation Center with partners in Aachen, Bangkok, Chennai, and Dresden, hence called ABCD Center, which has one of dedicated thematic cluster on ecosystem resilience and nature-based adaptation measures. The ABCD Center will host its session here at the Dresden Nexus conference on Wednesday morning, so please join. The Dresden Nexus conference is an excellent opportunity for scientists, experts, and stakeholders from around the world to exchange their expertise and views from various point of views, starting from different perspectives and also including practical implementation approaches at a local level. The conference does not only provide a stage for state-of-the-art research, but also to meet with representatives from governmental and further implementing institutions. One part of the TU Dresden Future Strategy comprises lifelong learning. Here again, at the Dresden Nexus conference is a key to connect people from multiple backgrounds and stimulate mutual learning and cooperation. Only when listening to and learning from each other, starting to think holistically and aiming for synergies, we can realize effective transfer of knowledge and technologies into society. This includes transfer activities towards various economic sectors, which eventually became essential to achieve the objectives of the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, where we all follow the development of its post-2020 agenda with utmost attention. I'm convinced that the outcome of this conference will be another stepping stone in the right direction and will further contribute to the portfolio of the organizing institutions regarding their responsibility in providing solutions for the stewardship for vital resources we all depend on. I want to close with highlighting one point out of the most 10 must-knows from biodiversity science, published by the Leibniz Research Network Biodiversity earlier this year. The importance of expanding transnational infrastructures and education for sustainability, because local drivers of biodiversity loss are not limited by national borders, meaning that transnational action is also needed to counteract species loss. The Dresden Nexus Conference series is one of the major platforms for our international network activities, an overarching mindset to tackle the challenges towards a sustainable development. Based on the interconnectedness of all processes on Earth, the Nexus approach demonstrated by this conference series is key to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals of the Agenda 2030 and the Paris Climate Agreement. Thank you very much for your attention and really enjoy the Dresden Nexus Conference 2020, Biodiversity Stewardship for Vital Resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Tetzlaff. And now we have Professor Böhm, who focuses on sustainability at TU Dresden, and TU Dresden is also part of the Dresden Concept Network, where the Leibniz Institute of Ecological, Urban and Regional Development, IOER, and also University-FLORES is a member of. Over to you, Frau Böhm.
Dear participants of the Dresden Nexus Conference 2022, dear keynote speakers, dear directors, conveners, presenters, organizers, dear guests. It is a sincere pleasure to address my welcoming words to you on behalf of the Technische Universität Dresden in my position as Vice Rector, University Culture. TU Dresden is developing into a globally oriented and at the same time regionally anchored university for the 21st century. This incorporates also a distinguished social responsibility for the members of the university as well as for the city of Dresden and the civil society in general. With the profiling and strengthening of its university culture, TU Dresden is also becoming a role model of a socially responsible, equal opportunity providing, diversity-driven, cosmopolitan and sustainable institution. We aim to emphasize and further develop the variety of perspectives at TU Dresden as they emerge from different professional expertise, gender identity and age classes, among many others. We work together to further increase the recognition and impact of our university in society, politics and economy. In that regard, university culture is one of the defining pillars of this German University of Excellence. Within its manifold and challenging duties, the Directorate of University Culture takes the leading role in advancing the topic of ecological sustainability and integrating it in a comprehensive sustainability strategy for TU Dresden. This needs to be addressed in an international as well as inter- and transdisciplinary setting to tackle current challenges and the urgent need for sustainable management, including biodiversity and the ecosystem services it provides for human well-being. Nature provides the setting in which cultural processes and activities develop, all of which feed back to shape the local environment and its diversity. And as quoted in the 4th United Nations Global Environment Outlook in 2007, quote, "Nature and culture converge on many levels that span values, beliefs and norms to practices, livelihoods, knowledge and languages. As a result, there exists a mutual feedback between cultural systems and the environment, with a shift in one often leading to a change in the other." End of quotation. As you all know, biodiversity is an essential component of the biophysical baseline of the Earth system and a required asset for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and the Agenda 2030. Biodiversity can be used sustainably and equitably to reduce inequality and poverty worldwide. Hence, it is imperative to further develop inter- and transdisciplinary cooperation with various actors from business, society and politics towards an integrated approach on sustainability, where the sum of interrelations between nature, society and economy is more than the sum of the separate parts. I am convinced that the research and teaching activities at TU Dresden significantly contribute in terms of advancing concepts, methods and knowledge of environmental management, sustainability assessment and policy in cross-disciplinary cooperation with chairs of various faculties, the FLORES Institute of the United Nations University and the Leibniz Institute of Ecological, Urban and Regional Development. Living examples are joint efforts at the Center of International Postgraduate Studies of Environmental Management, of which the alumni of a recent course will host a dedicated session, or the Nexus seminar series and several joint doctoral programs, to name only a few. The Dresden Nexus Conference is an international conference series that advances the research and implementation of the Nexus approach in resource management. By bringing together stakeholders from different disciplines and sectors, the conference promotes dialogue on how the Nexus approach contributes to achieving the SDGs. Researchers and implementers, such as politicians and decision makers from universities, national and international organizations, UN agencies, ministries and government agencies, as well as individual scientists and stakeholders from the private sector and civil society, will collectively discuss current research and initiatives applying the Nexus approach and on the benefits for achieving the SDGs. With an emphasis on the Global South, information, discussions and recommendations shared during DNC2022 will connect stakeholders and provide a basis for future work. We also assume that this conference will be the starting point for new cooperation in research, education and transfer. On behalf of the extended Executive Board of TU Dresden, I am delighted to welcome you to the Inter- and Transdisciplinary Conference, and we are proud to be one of the hosts for the upcoming days. I wish all of you fruitful debates and novel insights in current approaches to tackle global change challenges in social ecological systems from a local, a regional and a global perspective. I am confident that the contributions by experts from around the world will open new ways of thinking towards the Nexus approach, and TU Dresden would be honored to build on existing collaborations and to create new ones in the near future. Thank you very much for your attention and enjoy the Dresden Nexus Conference 2022 Biodiversity, Stewardship for Vital Resources.
Thank you so much, Professor Böhm. And now, before we start with the sessions, over to our colleague Marc Wolfram. He's the director of the Leibniz Institute of Ecological, Urban and Regional Development, and he will introduce us all to the next 3 days. Over to you, Marc.
Yeah, thank you, Edel, and a very warm welcome also from my side to the 2022 edition of the Dresden Nexus Conference. I'm the director of the Leibniz Institute of Urban and Regional, Ecological, Urban and Regional Development, long name, so for you it will be easier to refer to IOER. That's of course linked to the German name, so don't wonder about the abbreviation, just use it. I will share a couple of slides to introduce a little bit about the Institute, but also clarify about the program, of course. So the IOER is founded in 1992, so we're looking back on 30 years of practical and transdisciplinary research in matters of ecosystems, biodiversity in the context of urban and regional development. And our research scope is dealing essentially, of course, with spatial interactions between ecosystems, society, and technology. So we understand our research subject in terms of a systems perspective, with a strong focus on places, basically. And in particular, of course, also with a view to options and possibilities for actual development of stewardship in terms of sustainability and resilience of places. So therefore, our mission is clearly focusing on transformative change and sustainability transformations, clearly oriented at sustainability and planetary justice. If you are interested in the details, we have just adopted a new vision, which you can find on our website, which also clarifies about our research approach, because we are essentially focusing on spatial sustainability sciences. So using, I think at the Institute, more than 40 different disciplines that work on these matters, involving, of course, very strongly stakeholders in society, because this research is clearly for impact. Yeah, we have 4 principal research areas at the Institute, and these are dealing with transformative capacities on the one hand side, so actual ways for empowering places to undertake practical transformative change. There is an area dealing with landscapes, ecosystems, and biodiversity, as well as another area working on the built environment in terms of its resource and environmental risk dimension. And this is also clarifying why the Nexus is very much at the core of our research agenda and practices. And of course, there's an area dealing with the spatial data sciences required for this. We're also monitoring spatial development in Germany, providing a full range of ecological indicators for that. Of course, the Institute is also involved in the Leibniz research network that has just published the 10 must-knows that were just mentioned, and that we have been co-authoring. I would also like to highlight the Dresden Leibniz Graduate School that we are running. There is a special session on this also as part of the conference. We are about to publish the call for application. So if you are interested in doing your PhD in this context, then please check out the website of the Dresden Leibniz Graduate School. In terms of the program, what do we have ahead of us? Of course, 3 days which are very full of rich contributions, insights, and possibilities for exchange with peers in science and in policy, starting, of course, with and from our keynote speakers. We are very happy to welcome very distinguished experts in the fields from a variety of perspectives. And those will take place on today and on Tuesday after lunch break here in Central European Summertime. We have a total of 24 sessions that were built upon, of course, the call for contributions, half of which are organized by the IOER. And there are a variety of tracks, of course, that we're covering that are part of the concept of the conference. There are also 2 special sessions organized that you can see here tomorrow. They are involving external stakeholders or look at a specific university program here. There is an open session that is built on the open topic call on Wednesday morning. And I would also like to draw your attention to the networking events, because these will be taking place on Tuesday and Wednesday, during lunch break. So it's the lunchtime here in Europe, of course, that provide for opportunities to connect to other conference participants. Also, I would like to point out already, even though we're just starting the conference, but the closing session, this is linked to also the presentation of the Prisma Award. So stay tuned. This is, of course, another highlight in the conference. Also, but looking ahead, even though we're just starting the conference towards the final products, you have probably recognized that on the virtual venue, there is a signatory document announced, and this is something that we have been producing also in the past Dresden Nexus conferences, a declaration which is synthesizing key insights, outcomes, and also theses that are developing out of the discussion in the conference. This year we will do the same, but this year you're invited to contribute. So please do so. Please have a look at the website here. You can contribute until the 31st of May, and the final product will then, of course, be disseminated widely. Equally emerging and developing during the conference will be our flagship product, which is a video on the conference topic, so 5 minutes, very condensed about biodiversity and the Resource Nexus, based on interviews with keynote speakers, participants, DNC organizers, local government officials, of course, as well as case studies. So check out, of course, the video as soon as it becomes available, and we would be happy if this would be shared widely. Yeah, about the technicalities of the conference. We're using the virtual venue, and that means that all our sessions will be live streamed and are therefore easily accessible. If you want to actively contribute and participate in the session, and please use the Zoom links, which are also provided in the venue. So you will find those links, of course, below the respective session indicated. In terms of participant networking, this is also enabled bilaterally, so you can directly connect to other people at the conference through the chat and the call, using the search and filter function under participants. So that is another possibility and opportunity here, of course. There's the poster gallery you will find that brings together all the poster contributions from positions. If you navigate to the upper menu, you will find this easily. And of course, I would like to highlight the rules and etiquette very importantly. Please enter the Zoom rooms only 5 minutes before session start, not earlier, because usually there will be tests performed and it will be easier for colleagues to have that time before the sessions for this purpose. If you join the Zoom room, then take care that you, if you do not want to be shown on the live stream, because these will be put online, that you decide about whether or not you switch on or off your camera in this regard, of course. And please refrain yourself from recording the sessions in order to avoid any legal issues. Of course, there will be session rules also posted within the session, so check out the chat for those, and please stick to the general etiquette of the conference. So thanks for that in advance. Thanks for your understanding. And I wish everyone a fruitful exchange, an inspiring exchange, of course, intriguing discussions over the next 2 days, and enjoy the Dresden Nexus conference.
Thank you so much, Marc. And with this, we would all now send you to the breaks. And if there are any questions, just type them. Then also our support team can answer them also during the whole conference. So we are now looking forward to vital discussions over the next 3 days. Thank you so much.